There's something special about the Wii that I still can't really put my finger on. It has some sort of quality that no other gaming console has had before or since its release in 2006. And it's this intangible quality that keeps me and many others playing to this day. The Nintendo Wii was an absolute hit in the gaming industry. I remember being dumbfounded by the motion controls. Like, what do you mean? If I move my hand, it'll move on the screen?
Oh my god.
You see, the release of this console came at a time when Nintendo needed it most. They had spent so many years on top, having a tight grip on the gaming industry all throughout the 90s. But once the Nintendo 64 was released, Sony emerged and was able to one-up them with the cooler, sleeker, more powerful PlayStation. Suddenly, the big dogs were no longer so confident. They were being replaced, and fast, as the kids who grew up on their first few systems were switching over to Sony, probably because of their more mature marketing campaign and seemingly more modern system. So what was Nintendo's answer? Well, they tried to fight power with power and came out with the GameCube, but it just wasn't enough. And now, to make matters worse, Microsoft entered the ring with the Xbox. The GameCube is now looked back on as a great console, mainly because of the great games in its library. But as much as we all cherish the GameCube and its games now, it was objectively a big fat L for Nintendo at the time, as they lost even more market share to their two new competitors. It's no argument that Nintendo had always stayed innovating in terms of making great games, but they simply couldn't keep up in terms of power and graphics, which was what a lot of people were beginning to prioritize. So when the bigwigs at the top met to discuss their next console, they knew a serious switch-up was in order. We all know that Nintendo is good at making video games because they can think about the confines of their hardware and are able to push their games to those limits. So here's where they had a brilliant idea. What if they took their creative, outside-the-box thinking for software, but this time instead applied it to the hardware itself? On top of this, what if instead of competing with Sony and Microsoft directly, they looked beyond the current gaming market and tried to tap into the masses of people who've never picked up a controller before? So with this in mind, we can begin seeing where their heads were at when coming up with the core design elements for the Wii. To attract newcomers, there's an almost meta way in which the console was designed, as its new playstyle dovetailed perfectly with the changing living rooms of family homes in the mid-2000s. And this is what truly sets the Wii apart from other consoles. Its very blueprints were formulated by considering the physical confines of the environment of the player. Satoru Iwata once described the considerations that designers went through when formulating the blueprints for the Wii. The biggest? The new way in which families treated the television. Back in the 90s, families had maybe one or two bulky-ass CRT TVs in their household. Now, in 2006, families were picking up plasma TVs like Big Macs, and these TVs were getting smaller and flatter too. The result was a complete shape-up of contemporary living rooms, less clutter. Nintendo saw something here. They could use this extra space for moving around and getting Uncle Louie some cardio. As I mentioned in a previous short, the Wii itself was really meant to introduce all ages and demographics to video games, to try to showcase that games are not just meant to be played by children or middle-aged guys that refuse to leave their mother's basement like me. Even the very form factor of the console plays a role in this idea of trying to create a more welcoming atmosphere surrounding gaming. It fits very nicely on a shelf or TV stand, and it doesn't stand out. For someone who's unfamiliar with systems, the Wii might just look like another decoration on a living room accent table. What's perhaps more important than the system's case is the introduction of the Wii Remote, and its simplicity was definitely one of the driving factors behind the success of the console. With the Wii Remote, they went back to their NES roots by limiting the number of buttons on the controller, so in doing so, pretty much all games are really easy to pick up and just start playing, with little, if any, direction. Because of this, it was far less intimidating for newcomers trying out the console for the first time, and the limitations of the controller's interface meant that game devs had to get creative in terms of motion controls with the games that they were bringing to the Wii. Speaking of motion controls, in perhaps one of the smartest business plays in gaming history, Nintendo packaged the Wii with the beloved Wii Sports. It was a genius strategy to show the simplicity yet engagingness of the console and its new gimmick. Tennis, baseball, bowling, golf, and boxing. Everybody and their mother knows the rules of these games to begin with, so there is no barrier for entry. And this variety shows the Wii Remote's ability to replicate a wide range of motions. Whether you're playing baseball, bowling, golfing, or playing tennis, you're really just doing the same thing over and over again in each game, swinging the controller around. This simplicity sounds like it may get boring or repetitive, but in actuality, it's just a way of giving players more autonomy in how they play, because each game is just as accessible. If you can play tennis on the Wii, you may find that you soon want to try out baseball. You can pick that game up just as fast as the other. The choice to use sports as the backbone for the gameplay also enabled a greater emphasis on playing with multiple people. So in this sense, Wii Sports was really more of a showcase of the Wii's unique ability to bring people together to play. There's one more addition that was introduced with the Wii that's often sort of overlooked, and that's the addition of Miis. There's something so thrilling about the novelty of messing around on the Mii channel, putting your friends and family into the system, and then seeing all of them duke it out in a game of baseball. With Miis, Nintendo didn't really need to hold focus groups to carefully concoct a new shiny mascot to market their new console. Instead, you were the new character. And you, and you, and you, and you, and even you. It further drove home the idea that the console was for quite literally anybody, no matter what you looked like or how you moved.
Yo, it looks just like you.
You think so? When I think about the ingenuity of the Wii, I like to compare it to Apple's release of the iPhone. While we had other phone companies trying to squeeze out QWERTY keyboards and compact screens into their devices, in comes Apple with a small tablet with one button. Just like Nintendo, they instead focused on how they could expand on the mechanics of natural human movement with the simplicity and accessibility of the touchscreen. And just like Nintendo, they were able to make a device universally used and accepted by everyone. Before Nintendo even knew it, they had created a perfect storm of marketing and innovation to successfully expand the gaming market tenfold on the back of the Wii. And this legacy is exactly what makes the Wii still relevant today. Since its release, no other console that's come after has been able to capture this simple appeal and accessibility that the Wii has. Like a classic board game, the Wii has now become a universally recognized source of entertainment that lends itself to be played by anybody. By design, like riding a bike, the Wii can be picked up, turned back on, and enjoyed even over 15 years later. So I implore you, invite some family over, get Uncle Louie back in the house, dust off your Wii, and appreciate the ingenious legacy that it's created for the gaming industry. Thanks for watching.